Next question involves the Middle East. Yesterday in the headlines, Congress overrides the veto of President Obama at 9/11 victims, the lawsuits they could bring against Saudi Arabia, which brings to mind, first of all, Mr. Eldridge, this. What should America's role be in the Middle East?
Well, we should, my foreign policy view that I would advocate in the Middle East and elsewhere is that we should have a strong and unapologetic and smart foreign policy. Clearly, our number one priority in the Middle East is to make sure we are containing and dealing with and eradicating the terrorist threat that we face. And we can't mince words. That is a radical Islamic jihadist threat. It is most embodied in ISIS, but of course there are legacy Al-Qaeda groups. There are a whole host of other groups throughout the region that we need to be focused on. And I would insist upon a strong and unapologetic foreign policy in dealing with those. You know, we need to look at the Levant area in Syria and Iraq. Syria is obviously a complicated situation since our last debate. The ceasefire has fallen apart, and we need to focus on how we cut through all of that and eradicate ISIS. We also need to be very mindful of the threat, the terrorist threat in general. And you know, the last point I'll make on this is, you know, I met with a waitress last night in Batesville, and she said to me that her husband was in the Air Force, and they have a 2-year-old, and he's been overseas a whole lot, and she's concerned he's going to have to go back. And she specifically mentioned the Middle East. And that really drives home the difficulty here. That's why boots on the ground would be a last resort for me in any circumstance. There are certainly threats that would need to happen for, but she said, you know, I just don't understand why, if we're going to go into a country to deal with a threat, we don't go in. She said we should go in, we should deal with it quickly, swiftly, take it out, and come back. And you know what? I think she's right. And that's the approach I would take and advocate to all the threats that we have. Meet it head on, deal with it, keep our country safe, and then get out of there and come back to America and focus on our issues here.
Mr. Gilbert, your 2-minute response, America's role in the Middle East.
Our role in the Middle East now is covered by our role in the Middle East since Tripoli. The U.S. Marine Corps invaded Libya before it was Libya, and we've been interfering in the Middle East and Northern Africa ever since. I saw a meme on Facebook yesterday that showed an American flag flying upside down and burning. If you are angry when you see the American flag burn, think how you would feel if you're a child, and the second part of the meme was a young child lying dead. How would you feel if your child had been killed in a drone strike? The way you end war is by not fighting. We're not in danger. There is no reason for American boots to be on that ground. If we want to help in the Middle East, whether it be Syria, Iraq, Iran, Libya, all of the hot spots that are there now, I think the Red Cross or the Red Crescent would be a lot better banner for the United States to fly under when we go to the Middle East. I know there are people there who hate us. I know there are people there who want to hurt us. I don't believe putting more troops on the ground. I don't think any more drone strikes. I don't believe any violent act by the United States will make it any better. I look forward to a time when the United States could be what it was before the Great Wars, the largest neutral country in the world. George Washington asked us at the beginning to give the world honest, open friendship with all and entangling alliances with none. Not following his advice has gotten us where we are. Bombs will not get us out.
We have to be very clear in this country that we face very real threats that emanate from the Middle East and frankly other places across the world. And we've got to be realistic in dealing with those. I do not believe we can be the world's policeman. I do not believe we can stretch ourselves too thin. But I think there is an approach that allows us to promote a strong and unapologetic and smart foreign policy without overcommitting ourselves in ways that cost us in terms of our debt and in terms of families, as I mentioned earlier, the example from Batesville last night. And that's the kind of foreign policy I would advocate. Strategic, focused on the threat, dealing with the threat in a strong, aggressive, head-on way. And also we should add here working with the international community to do that. NATO is a strong alliance. We need to continue to unequivocally state our support and involvement in it in dealing with these threats. Our opponent who's absent is supporting a presidential candidate who has at least considered withdrawing from NATO, or said he thinks we should consider that. I've got a major problem with that. I think there is a way for us to be tough and smart on foreign policy in a way that achieves our objectives, but also does not overcommit us and does not overextend us, and is responsible in dealing with the threats that we face. That's what I would go to the Senate floor and advocate every day if necessary.
Mr. Gilbert, your 1 minute rebuttal.
Thanks, sir. Do you remember George W. Bush's campaign for the presidency, his first one? And he promised us, I quote, an humble foreign policy. I believe he intended to do that. And then he, like too many of us, became frightened by 9/11. He reacted to that, and he kept reacting to it throughout his presidency. In 2008, who here would have believed that President Barack Obama would have kept us at war 8 years? He is the first American president to serve 2 full terms, the entirety of which we were in a declared war. Folks, this is not an issue where we can dissimulate, where we can take a pragmatic approach. With the history we've had since 1917, we have to look the world in the eye and say, man, we messed up. I'm so sorry for what happened to you and your children. I'm sorry for the generations that suffered because of our imperialism. Oh, it can't be imperialism. It's the United States. It is imperialism. And it is the United States. And when you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. And if we do not quit sowing the wind, the whirlwind we're going to reap will stagger the imagination. We have to tell the world we did wrong, I regret it, and we'll do better. If we don't approach it that way, we'll do what George Bush did. We'll do what Barack Obama did. And we will allow ourselves to be pulled into those demons of war that may or may not exist. We can defend ourselves, but our defense does not begin in Damascus.
All right.